Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I served together in Congress for 15 years. We didn't always agree, but I believe we shared some common values: a belief in defending democracy and human rights abroad, and honoring the Constitution at home. That's why I voted to confirm you. I believed you would stand up for those principles. You haven't. You've done the opposite. And you used to speak with conviction about the importance of foreign aid as a tool to advance American values and interests. Then you stood by while Elon Musk took a chainsaw to USAID and other assistance programs. That has left a staggering toll: broken trust with countries, openings for China and other adversaries, and countless preventable deaths of children and others. Take Sudan, for example. The freezing of U.S. humanitarian assistance forced the closure of nearly 80% of the emergency food kitchens there. 2 million famine-affected people were left without access to food. People died because of those actions: mothers, fathers, and children. Tons of emergency food that could have saved their lives was left rotting in warehouses because you and Elon Musk refused to let USAID do its job. Sudan is a country where, by the administration's own determination, a genocide is unfolding in Darfur. But here's where it goes from cruel to despicable. While cutting off food aid to Sudanese families living through an actual genocide, you're fast-tracking white South Africans for refugee status under a manufactured claim that they are the victims of genocide. You tried to block the admission of individuals who had already been approved to come here as refugees, while making bogus claims to justify granting such status to Afrikaners. You've made a mockery of our country's refugee process, turning it into a system of global apartheid, where political ideology and race, more than truth or need, matter. And while you've turned away from a genocide in Sudan and invented one in South Africa, you teamed up with President Trump to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus, and have been played like a fiddle by Vladimir Putin. Of course, Donald Trump not only said he would end the war in Ukraine on day one, he also said he would end the war in Gaza on day one. And yet last week, you were all running around to Gulf states, giving away very sensitive American AI and chips technology, but doing nothing to end the war in Gaza and get the remaining hostages returned. You know that for 78 days, the Netanyahu government did not allow a scrap of food to enter Gaza to reach over 2 million civilians. 57 children have died from malnutrition so far, and more than 14,000 children are in imminent danger of dying of starvation. As Cindy McCain said last week, and I quote, "Families in Gaza are starving while the food they need is sitting at the border." That is a gross violation of both U.S. and international law. What did you do? Nothing. Not once did you publicly call upon the Netanyahu government to end the blockade. Fortunately, other countries spoke out, and now we see a tiny trickle going in. Where have you focused your energy instead, Mr. Secretary? Well, your first trip as Secretary of State was to El Salvador, not to promote democracy, but to cozy up to President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The result was a cash for collusion deal to deprive people living in America of their constitutional rights to due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. You dredged up a relic from the McCarthy era to claim that student protesters posed a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. Give me a break, Mr. Secretary. You know as well as I do this isn't about national security, it's about punishing free speech. And you know that in America, the government doesn't get to use its power to punish speech it doesn't like. Yet in March, you boasted about revoking student visas, saying, and I'm quoting, "We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa," unquote. Let's look at one of those lunatics, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Ozturk. Her crime was co-authoring an op-ed in her college paper critical of Tufts University's response to the war in Gaza. Your own department found zero links to terrorism, no anti-Semitic statements, but you still yanked her visa and shipped her off to detention in Louisiana. And the list goes on and on. The federal judge in the case of Mohsen Madawi, who is the Columbia student who was ambushed by federal agents at his citizenship appointment, said, and I quote, this is the judge, "Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids. Like the McCarthy-era witch hunts of the 1950s, your campaign of fear and repression is eating away at foundational values of our democracy. Back then, it took one voice, Attorney Joseph Welch, to cut through the hysteria with the simple question that marked the beginning of the end of that shameful era. He asked Senator McCarthy, have you no sense of decency? And I would ask you the same, Secretary Rubio. But you have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job, based on what I know.
Well, that's
about
just
your
a
record and
flippant
what you
statement,
stand
Mr.
for.
Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his
Your time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well-
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue, but I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
I raised
don't regret
Sudan, Mr.
psychosocial support services.
I raised
for USAID.
Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I respond,
not
Mr.
Mozambique.
Chairman, or do I?
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose to
railing
use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use
suspend
my time that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come,
Mr.
you're
Chairman,
going to see who you went to
look,
defend.
Senator,
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary
No.
Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated
Senator,
comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court in
Senator-
the United States because
Well,
he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach to that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them, we've had communications with the president of El Salvador. I am under no obligation, under our division of powers in this country, and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ozturk did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she
And if you
did?
do
Come
that-
on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single
You're
one of
just
these
blowing
cases, the
smoke
factors
here
are
now.
different.
Senator-
The bottom line is, if you're
Senator,
coming here
we-
to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you
Does
have
the
a
First
visa
Amendment
and we find
apply
you,
to
we'll
people
revoke
living in
it.
the United
And
States?
we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through
Writing
a bunch
an
of
op-ed
lunatics
to the
who are
tough
here on
newspapers
student visas.
disrupting the
Simple
foreign
as that.
policy of the United
I want to
States?
do more. I hope we can
That's
find more of these people.
pathetic, Mr.
In fact, the other
Secretary.
day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much safer
All right,
when you
let's,
lock up people like Ms. Osterk, Mr. Secretary.
We've had enough time on the subject. Thank you very much, and thank you, Senator. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. When you were last testifying before this committee, you and I talked about water in South Texas, and we talked about the 1944 Water Treaty. As you know well, South Texas has, for the last 4 years, faced a severe drought, and that drought has been substantially exacerbated by the conduct of the government of Mexico, and in particular, its repeated and flagrant violations of the 1944 Water Treaty. Under that treaty, Mexico is obligated to provide 350,000 acre-feet of water each year to South Texas. Mexico was breaking that treaty, and there were 1.3 million acre-feet of water in arrears. As a consequence, South Texas is facing a massive drought. South Texas farmers are putting out of production up to half their acreage. They're laying off workers. Last year, the only sugar mill in the state of Texas closed because sugar farmers could not get the water to grow their crop. And you committed at that hearing to work with me and assist in pressuring Mexico to comply with that treaty. In the months since then, you have followed through on that commitment. You have leaned in vigorously with the government of Mexico. Your deputy, Chris Landau, has done the same thing. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has done the same thing. And then critically, President Trump put out a public statement on Truth Social, making clear to Mexico that there would be serious consequences, sanctions and tariffs if they did not comply with the water treaty. I will say, as a result of the president's leadership and your hard work, we've had a major victory for South Texas, and Mexico has committed to providing 400,000 acre-feet of water, which is desperately needed. So I want to just start by saying thank you. In 4 years under Joe Biden, the Biden administration would not lift a finger for Texans, for farmers in South Texas, to hold Mexico to account, and the Trump administration has done more in 4 months fighting for water in South Texas than Joe Biden did for 4 years. So I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to ask how the State Department is approaching next steps on the 1944 Water Treaty.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that the commitment is met, and then we have to begin to prepare for the next cycle. This is a one-year problem. So we want to continue to work on that to make sure that those commitments are made, and that then in the next cycle, this becomes made permanent. That in essence, this becomes the new standard operating procedure and not a one-off. And by the way, it has to be something that exists beyond the presidency of the current president, because if the next president doesn't prioritize it, it could go back. So I just think this continued engagement with them on our expectations. The truth of the matter is, and in fairness, the Mexican government has grown increasingly cooperative on a number of fronts, both on national security issues and common security issues, but also on issues such as this. We're also happy, I think there's also the new treatment plant that they've opened, the Tijuana wastewater one, that we think will also be very helpful to water issues in the region and also the water quality issues. But this was a good news story. I think it's what happens when you make something a priority and then follow through on it. But we have to sustain it, and that really is our focus now, to sustain this through for future cycles, not just the short term.
So, and I'll tell you, earlier this year, I went down to the Rio Grande Valley with Secretary Rollins. And in December, I wrote a provision in the continuing resolution that provided emergency relief to South Texas farmers, $280 million. And Secretary Rollins came down. Now, Brooke is the first Texan ever to be the U.S. Agriculture Secretary, and she's the first Ag Secretary in history to go to the Rio Grande Valley. And Secretary Rollins and I did a roundtable, and I will say You and I have both been very focused on the Hispanic community in particular. I will say the impact in the Rio Grande Valley of having a president and an administration that is fighting for them is enormously consequential. And so I was very grateful that she came down, and the farmers and ranchers in South Texas see that they've got a president and an administration that's fighting for them. Let me shift to a different topic. Today, South African President Ramaphosa is in Washington, D.C. He'll be meeting with President Trump tomorrow. You and the president, as well as other administration officials, have repeatedly and rightly criticized South African policies on issues ranging from human rights to activities that directly undermine American national security. Those activities, in turn, include what appears to be an explicit and extensive pivot away from the United States and towards the Chinese Communist Party. There are also serious and credible allegations that the South African government's decision-making is compromised by widespread corruption tied directly to Iran. They are working together to target our Israeli allies on the international stage. President Ramaphosa himself has taken an aggressive position, leading a charge of genocide against Israel in the International Court of Justice. And he has pushed for precedents and policies that will not just undermine Israel, but expose American officials to vulnerabilities as well. I have every confidence that President Trump will demand South African officials change their policies and will hold them accountable if they don't. And it's critically important for the American people to understand the bases for our policies. Please talk a little bit about the extent of South Africa's malign activities and how they are undermining American national security interests.
Well, it's one of the, first of all, we chose not to participate in this year's G20 hosted by South Africa, either at the foreign minister level or the president's level. And it had a lot to do with some of these issues, in addition to some of the issues they brought on their agenda, which we don't think reflect the priorities of this administration. So the president of South Africa is here today because he says he endeavors to reset relations between our countries. And President Trump, if someone says that, is always going to be open to resetting relations. But it will have to touch on some of the issues just pointed to now. Obviously, the position they've adopted towards Israel is way, not just off balance, but completely geared towards one side. And it makes one wonder about these allegations that are out there now of foreign influence, including with Iran. They clearly, on the global stage, and multiple multinational organizations have consistently been a vote against America's interests, time and again. Not one-off. You always understand when some country has to go in one direction opposite to you because, you know, that happens. That's what diplomacy is ultimately about. Diplomacy is also about when we're aligned, we work together. When we're unaligned, we have to talk. But when one country is consistently unaligned with the United States on issue after issue after issue after issue, now you have to make conclusions about it. So all I could say about the meeting today, I'm not there obviously because I'm here with all of you. In fact, it may be going on right now as we speak, or was scheduled to go on as we speak, is this was an outreach on the part of the South African president. He said he wanted to come to Washington. He wanted to reset relations with the United States. I have no reports as to how that meeting has gone so far. If there's a willingness on their side to reset relations, obviously something we'll explore, but we do so with eyes wide open to what they've done so far.
And how does their campaign against Israel undermine America?
Well, I think, first of all, because it echoes some of the charges that are being made by some of the biggest enemies of Israel that happen to be ours, whether it's Iran, whether it's these radical groups that chant death to America, death to Israel. So we're very concerned about that. I also think there's real concern in our mind about some of these international institutions that, frankly, South Africa has lined up strongly behind, who would seek to, if they could, jail, imprison, indict American office holders because of some of the positions we've taken on public policy, even though we're not members to the conventions that create these entities. So if you talk about these groups they are in essence utilizing their forum on the national stage as a nation state under this president and this leadership to echo the claims and the positions taken by not just Iran, but in many cases China as well.
Thank you.